I'm sinking here, fighting back the tears. We used to smile at little stuff, then after we would laugh. I won't forget the memories we had.
All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the fourth service of Alila Ministry, where our faith is rooted in our divine universal creator. I am minister, teacher, student, servant, Andrea Grace. Thank you again for joining me in our fourth service. So today's service will be an exploration on reincarnation. Is reincarnation real? And it will probably be a two-parter because there's so much information to share around this, and it's fascinating, and it creates possibility within ourselves to expand into that greater part of our consciousness that has a direct relationship with the divine and with God. But let's first start with a prayer. This will be a short one. Let me pull it up. Bring our two hands together. Father, hear our prayer. Lead us from unreal to real. Lead us from darkness to the light. Lead us from the fear of death to the knowledge of immortality. Thank you. Amen. That is from the Upanishads. All right. So next we'll just go through our mission statement, just to bring it top of mind. Our mission is to provide a safe and supportive space for individuals seeking holistic healing and spiritual guidance, grounded in our faith in God. We believe that true healing comes from a connection to the divine and the recognition of the inherent divinity within each individual. We seek to honor the body, mind, and spirit connection through natural healing methods aligned with God's design for the human body. We strive to empower individuals to take an active role in their own healing process by providing guidance and support that's rooted in spiritual principles. And we aim to create an environment that fosters compassion, connection, and growth. Through our work, we hope to inspire others to deepen their faith in God and discover the transformative power of spiritual healing. All right, so before we do a deep dive into the topic, I'm just going to continue on with my story, a little bit where we left off. So where we left off was that I was 10 years old. My sister had passed away. My mom had declared that there was no such thing as God for a child to die before her parent. And even though I believed her, and so, you know, the old man with the long beard in heaven disappeared from my mind, I still couldn't I couldn't untie myself from the awe, the natural awe I had for the natural world. That the realization, the acknowledgement that there was something more intelligent, more wise, and more organized than myself. A year passes, and my mum and I go into town, which is Adelaide, the city where I'm from, where I was born. And at the time, it was the early 80s, and Hare Krishnas were in town. And I guess I'm thinking, I can't really remember at the time, I'd have to ask my mum, but I think we were in town to visit my grandma. She worked for a department store there. And so instead of joining my mum inside, I opted to wait outside. It was a nice day to watch the Hare Krishnas because they were just so fascinating. They're in their robes, they had drums, they were drumming, they were chanting, you know, they have the shaved heads, the ponytail, the paint, and so the whole thing was just captivating. And then I noticed that there was a table of books off to the side. And so I went over to look at the books because I was fascinated with stories. I was an avid reader. And when I got closer, I saw that actually the table was full of the same book. It was one book, and the book had a picture of a man, Indian man, on the cover. And so the book was autobiography of a yogi. And I devoured that book. And it's easy for you to look up a description of what the book is about, but essentially it's an autobiography of this very famous and very influential Hindu spiritual leader who had brought yoga, essentially was responsible for bringing yoga from the East to the West. And so in that book, it provided me a completely alternate worldview. And I learned the words reincarnation. I learned the words karma. There were different realms of heaven. There were mystical powers, mystical graces. It's an incredible story, and especially for an 11-year-old who was now open to learning. And reading this story gave me so much peace because it illustrated that there was life after death. And so it meant for me that even though my sister was no longer here in the body, there was a part of her that had continued on. And that helped me also understand, or it gave me a deeper understanding of the function of prayer. Because I thought, okay, it makes sense then that our prayer can transcend and be heard across realms, even if we no longer have ears. So let's talk about reincarnation in history. So reincarnation is found in most of the world's religions. But essentially actually, let's look at the etymology of it. Okay, so reincarnation, it's a noun. So as we saw with resurrection, the re is a prefix that means again. And the in is a prefix that means in or into. The can is from the Latin caro or canis, which is the genitive form, meaning flesh. And then we know that in Spanish language, carne means meat. So then incarnation means the physical embodiment of spirit, spirit in the flesh. And reincarnation then means, again, the spirit is in the flesh. So the rebirth of the soul in the physical body. So essentially, we could also say that the phenomena of reincarnation is the non-physical aspect of consciousness, or a soul, has a new life, has a new life story, a new experience. Reincarnation appeared as early as 1500 years before Christ in the Vedas, and then later in the Upanishads. So the Upanishads, that Isha, the Isha, actually means by the Lord, and the Upanishads specifically seem to kind of be a more advanced teaching, moving away from the more ritualistic and primitive subject matter of the earlier Vedas. So the Upanishads are essentially a conversation between Lord Rama and his companion Hanuman. And I'm always fascinated by Hanuman because he's depicted as having a monkey face. And if we look at the word, and maybe you sit back a little bit, blur your eyes, you can see human in there. So anyway, that's just me. So the Upanishads are basically, there are 108 of them, and they're a conversation between Lord Rama and his companion Hanuman. And what's fascinating about them is that the author is unknown. The Upanishads teach that every man can follow a path to enlightenment. That's possible for every individual. And this is also reminiscent of Jesus's teaching. So there was certainly a wisdom, a new enlightenment in consciousness that was being ready to be breathed into human consciousness from 1500 years before Christ, through Christ's era, and then into this now time for me to be sitting here having this conversation with you. And so the Upanishads have the word, one of the words is samsara, and the samsara just simply means the cycle of birth and life. So it's inherent in the worldview that reincarnation exists. And in fact, I can show you a graphic. Let me just bring this up. So you can see how the path of reincarnation through these different lives, moving in the top left-hand corner as a woman, moving through to being a warrior man, fight or flight, then into a merchant type figure as a woman, then into the bottom right-hand corner, a woman who is worshipping at the temple, her spirit's getting cleaner, and then into Brahma, which is now that enlightened state. And so we're moving through the higher and lower aspects of consciousness through the reincarnation journey. The point of view is that the soul is eternal, and that the ultimate goal is to discover that enlightened state, the one true reality, beyond what this current time-oriented reality shows us. And I'll show you another carving. This is an 8-meter carving. And so this was made between 1177 and 1249. And it's located in China. And it's depicting Mara. So Mara is the Buddhist version of the devil. It's sometimes described as the Lord of Death, the Lord of Desire. So that's where you get caught. That's the energy that's sticky. And he's clutching a wheel of reincarnation, which outlines the Buddhist cycle of reincarnation. Reincarnation appears in the mystery teachings, like I said, of Christianity, Judaism, and also it can be found in Pythagorean doctrine. And Pythagorean doctrine, which inherited the Gauls teaching that the souls of men are immortal, and that after a fixed number of years, they meaning the soul, will enter into another body. And we can also find the concept of the phenomena of reincarnation, the addressing of the phenomena of reincarnation in the indigenous cultures as well, such as the Native American Inuit people. And even Henry Ford had an opinion about reincarnation and subscribed to that point of view. Let me show you what he said about reincarnation. You, we reincarnate over and over. We live many lives and store up much experience. some are older souls than others, and so they know more. It seems to be an intuitive gift. It is really hard-won experience. And then, we arrive here in Christianity, where we see in Matthew 11:14, Jesus tells the multitude of John the Baptist, he says, if you're willing to accept it, he, John, is Elijah who is to come. And then Jesus also states in the Gospel of Mark, but I will tell you that Elijah has come, and they did to him whatever they pleased, as it is written of him. And so the phrase, as it was written of him, which is speaking of Elijah, makes the whole point abundantly clear. Jesus was conveying that John the Baptist was the same spirit, the same soul of Elijah. And then we also see in Matthew 5, he says, you therefore must be perfect, as your heavenly Father is perfect. And here we could see that he's referring indirectly to rebirth. Because if you are perfect in some form, and yet in this form, you're not perfect. And so it seems that it's pointing to that we have these opportunities through these lives lived to achieve that high standard of perfection. And so it seems to me that reincarnation actually fits into the Christian notion that we can only return to God purely through Christ, because it's almost as though that part of the story is describing that end cycle where we're moving from that enlightened state of consciousness, where we've gone through the different life experiences, to then find ourselves at the end of it, to find our true and eternal home in God, to not reincarnate here. So to me, it seemed it actually all fits together. They don't contradict each other. All right, so it's that time. It's that time to pass the basket. So thank you to everyone who contributed last week, and for supporting the good work that we're doing here at the Elila Ministry, helping folks know their unique divine nature and to heal through it. So contributions can be made by check, made out to Elila Ministry and sent to 430 Springfield Avenue, Suite 209, Berkeley Heights, New Jersey, zip code 07922. And if you prefer, you can use Zelle and PayPal. And so I give you the way to use Zelle, so it's Elila Ministry, and then the number, and then I've offered you the QR code for PayPal. There's also a link, it's just PayPal me, Elila Ministry. So good, so I will take a little break while you enjoy the music, and I'll be back.
I feel you. I try to fill that space without your voice. No matter where you are, I'm with you. No matter where you are, I hear you. No matter where you are, I miss you. Your flesh will be made whole and your life begin again. May God bring you home.
Okay, so I'm going to show you a video now of a young boy who remembers being his grandfather.
The children will usually start talking about these memories at a very early age, usually 2 or 3. Some of them talk about them matter-of-factly, but other children use great emotion in describing these things and will often long for the previous family.
Jim records the child's memories and investigates whether there might be a connection to an actual person who has lived before.
This is a very interesting case of a boy who had memories of being his grandfather. And he said that God gives you a card to come back. And I guess this is a drawing of the card that he did.
Since he was a toddler, he has believed that in a past life, he was his own grandfather. Gus is now 10 years old.
When he was about 1.5, I was changing his diaper on his changing table, and he all of a sudden just looked at me and said, "You know, when I was your age, I used to change your diaper."
Okay, what do you think about that? And now let me show you another video. This story is quite a famous one. I came across this story, actually a friend of mine shared it with me many years ago, and it's where a young boy who remembers being a fighter pilot. And so let's watch this story now.
From the age of 3, James's parents began to hear stories from their son that shocked them. That their son was recalling things that connected him to a Navy pilot who died in 1945. They were skeptical. Bruce is an HR manager in the oil industry. Andrea is a former ballerina turned instructor. As Christians, they never believed in reincarnation, but they began to piece together an amazing story.
He was saying, airplane crash on fire, little man can't get out. Airplane crash on fire, little man can't get out. That's when I was like, oh my God, is that what he's been dreaming this entire time?
Within a year, the visions that greeted James in his nightmares began taking shape when he was wide awake.
I was reading to James, and then he sat up and he goes, Mama, the little man's going like this. And he laid down, and he goes, and he did the same thing he did in his dream. He was kicking his feet up, and he goes, the little man's going like this. Ooh, 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 can't get out, can't get out. And I sat him back up, and I said, who's the little man? And he goes, me. It still makes my hair stand up. And Bruce said, what happened to your plane? And he said, it crashed on fire. And he said, why did your airplane crash? And he said, it got shot. And Bruce said, who shot your plane? And he went, oh, the Japanese.
James then gave his parents the next uncanny clue, one that was very specific, the name of a ship from which he says his aircraft took off.
So I said, well, did your boat have a name? And he said, Natoma. And I'd never heard the word before. And I went down the hall and got onto the computer and Googled it. And down around hit 300, all there was this thing, Natoma Bay, CVE 62. Clicked on it, and up comes this history of a World War II aircraft carrier. I had no answers. You know, how could he know this? How could he know a person? How could he know a ship? And what did all this mean? So that was where I really just said, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know what I'm going to find, but I'm not going to stop looking until I get as many answers as I can get.
This was enough to send Bruce on an investigation, doing his own research. Over the next 2 years, he learned about the men from the Natoma Bay, both living and dead. And James kept giving his parents additional, tantalizing, eerie clues.
Well, I kept asking him, do you remember what your name was? Do you remember what your name was? And he always said James. And I thought, well, he's 2, he's confused. He thinks I'm asking him what his name is.
Then, James started drawing.
That was one of my mission things.
The mission thing, you remember that?
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite ones.
The same thing, over and over. Like a movie, compressed all into one frame. An air battle. Flak. a plane on fire, and his signature, James 3.
So one day I was in the kitchen, I was washing dishes, James had breakfast, and he had an airplane, he was just flying around like this, and he goes, "Mama, before I was born, I was a pilot, and my airplane got shot in the engine and crashed in the water, and that's how I died." And I was just froze. It was such a bizarre thing to say, but it was just that matter of fact. There was no drama, there was no emotion to it.
At 3, James started pretending to be a pilot with an attention to detail that astonished his father.
One day he dragged a car seat into the closet in my office, and he set up a little cockpit in there. He had a little play school console, and like it was going to be a cockpit, you know, and he's going back and forth. All of a sudden, the door comes flying open, and he comes rolling out of it. I said, "James, what happened to you?" He says, I said, "Did you fall?" He says, "No." He says, "My plane got shot, and I bailed out."
The next breakthrough came when Bruce was invited to the Natoma Bay Veterans Reunion. He asked about the names of men killed in battle, and this led him to finally solving the mystery of James 3.
He called me on the phone and he said, "You won't believe this. There's only one guy from Natoma Bay who was killed during the battle for Iwo Jima, and his name was James M. Houston Jr." And I said, "Wait, that would make our James 3. I was so excited. I'm like, "That's it." I'm like, "That's him. It's James M. Houston. His name is James. It's the James 3.
James Houston Jr., World War II Navy pilot. At age 21, on March 3, 1945, his plane was shot down over Chichijima. Now, the skeptical parents were sitting on compelling proof that their little boy really was reincarnated.
This plane, the Wildcat, is the plane that James M. Houston crashed in. And he was a test pilot for the Corsair. And he would test fly those off of carriers.
Since he was 2, James showed an unusual fascination for military air shows and an uncanny familiarity with vintage aircraft. James had 3 G.I. Joes he named Billy, Walter, and Leon, names his parents thought were strange for a boy to choose.
Bruce is like, "Hey, James, what are you going to name your G.I. Joe?" And he's just playing, he goes, "Walter." And so we were like, "Walter?" Bruce goes, "How come you named your G.I. Joes Billy, Walter, and Leon?" And he goes, "Because that's who met me when I got to heaven." And it was one of those moments where like the blood drained out of our face, and we just kind of walked backwards. Bruce went in the office, I went in the office, we closed the door. He's in there going through papers like this. I'm like, "What are you looking for? What are you looking for?" He finds this piece of paper, and he says, "Billy Peeler, Walter Devlin, and Leon Connor were all in the same squadron as James Houston." I was like, "When did they die? Did they die before?" He's throwing papers around, pulls out another sheet, and he looked at the dates of death, and they all died before James Houston died.
They all flew with him.
Although James's dad remained skeptical that reincarnation might really be possible, what happened next was uncanny.
So we're cleaning up the yard. He's playing in the leaves. I said, "I just love you to bits." And he goes, "Well," he said, "I knew you'd be a good daddy when I picked you." And I said, "What?" And he said, "Well, when I found you and Mommy, I knew you would be good parents." My head was shrinking to the size of a raisin, you know, my brain. I said, "What do you mean when you found us?" He said, "Well, I found you and Mommy in Hawaii."
James told his father that he saw them in a pink hotel, which is where the Leiningers were staying when they decided to have James. Bruce and Andrea were cautious about asking doctors and psychiatrists for help. They decided to find their own solution to James's ordeal. And their solution was to go to Japan, to the very expansive ocean where the pilot, James Houston Jr., died.
"Thou who art the pilot of the souls of men, grant me
The boat was right above where the wreckage of the plane was. And Bruce did this beautiful memorial service, and so I thought that was a perfect moment for me to just say, I sat down with him and I said, Jim Houston's been a part of your life for as long as we can remember, and he's always going to be an important part of who you are, but you have a life to live as James Leininger, and it's time for you to say goodbye to Jim Houston. And he just
started
bawling. And he cried for about 20 minutes.
He had
It
everyone
was the
on the
saddest
boat.
thing I ever seen.
He had everyone on the boat.
Crying. It's time for us to say goodbye to James Houston.
Goodbye, James and Houston.
Good job.
I salute you.
Good boy. You're so brave. You're such a brave soul. Such a brave soul and spirit.
But it's weird, when we got back to shore, it was something had changed.
He left something there.
He really did. It was palpable. You could see that he'd mourned that and everything that had happened and was ready to move on. And he really did at that point. That's kind of when everything really changed.
And so children all over the world have past life memories, because when they're new to this realm, their consciousness is still open and they're still connected to the greater part of themselves. And that's the way that I describe it, that there's a part of our consciousness that oversees our life, that holds the whole book of our story, that holds the book that contains all the stories. And so through the work that I'm doing here, that's the part that we are endeavoring through our intent, through cultivating a certain kind of relaxation in the body, to connect with that part, so that we can ask questions, so that we can explore, so that we can receive answers. And my experience through the past life regression work is that the stories that come are miraculous and they transcend imagination. Honestly, I can't give the personality that much credit, because the stories are so detailed and so sophisticated in the way that they tie in all the themes pertaining to the questions and the concerns, both conscious concerns, subconscious concerns, but somehow the story ties it all together in this beautiful, neat, thematic and schematic, and then, hands it over. And the other important thing about the past life regression experience is that it can also invoke a certain kind of feeling state. For example, you might have had an early childhood tragedy or trauma, and then as a form of protection and as an effect of the trauma in the body, it actually retarded the neural network pathway or the receptor to that specific emotion. And then so through the past life regression experience, through the method that I'm using, which is the quantum healing hypnosis, the story that the part of our consciousness that can provide us with this story, it also brings in those emotions to reconnect those neural network pathways to miraculously create the conditions for that feeling to be felt again. And so in the story of the young boy who has memories of being a fighter pilot from World War II, what we can see through that story is that he went through a healing journey, and that by the end, he got to take on and apply some of the experiences from that time, from that story, to his lifetime now. But then he was also able to let the traumatic go. And what I can't unknow through my experience every time is, so every time we go through this process, we go through the whole life. And so we move through the life by jumping from one important day to the next important day. And then eventually we arrive ourselves at the last day of this life that we're looking at and seeing, the last day that they were there. And we can look at it as an observer if we want to. And so what we also get to experience is that the death experience is as easy as just shifting perception, looking left when I was looking right, looking up when I was looking down. And that gives a comfort that, so you've gone through the death experience before, you're still here, your consciousness is intact, your soul is intact, and now you're here just having a new story, a new experience, another opportunity to play here, to love, to grow, to learn, to experience, to gain strength, to repeat patterns. Yeah, we're often finding ourselves still repeating patterns. And so only last week I had a session with my friend Tom, and that session I've actually put up on the channel, which is fascinating. It's hard to wrap your head around all of it. But in that session, when I asked who it was that we were talking to, because all this information was coming through, and when the information comes through at that expanded state of relaxation, the expanded state of consciousness, the one that's talking doesn't and like I'm umming and ahming. It doesn't do that. It just knows. The wisdom just comes through, and it might not be what we agree with. It might be difficult for our conscious minds to understand because we're so used to trusting our five senses to interact in this world with. So in that session, I asked, so who are we talking to? And the answer that came was, I was his grandfather in a past life. And then later in the session, I asked, what can I call you? What's the best name to call you? And the answer that came was guardian angel. I like that. It sounds official. And also so when he arrived in the scene, he arrived in the 1800s. And so we're exploring his life as a young man in the 1800s. And then we move forward in the life. His name was Matthew, in the life that we're looking at and seeing. And then we come to an important day. And on this day, his wife is giving birth to his first daughter. And then as he's looking at his wife, he says, I've seen her before. I know her from somewhere, something like that. And so when we explored that, we found out that she was his grandmother, and that she wanted to have the experience of childbirth again, of being a mother again. And so I'll play that little part where he mentions, when he talks about the process of reincarnation. I'll play that little bit here now for you.
It sounds like a very happy and important day. What's your wife's name?
Kim. Okay. Kimberly. She looks familiar. I know her from somewhere. I know she's somebody else. I can't place who she is.
Somehow she's familiar to you?
Most definitely. I can see that she's my wife, but she's somebody else.
And so we can ask who she is, how you know her. Just taking a moment to allow that information to come in. And so we're just curious, how does the soul that is Matthew in this lifetime that we're looking at and seeing, What's the relationship? How does he know his wife, Kimberly? 1, 2, 3. Just let the answer come.
Kimberly was his great-grandmother. She's come back. It's just another energy playing its role. She wanted to go through the process of being a mother again. She's been male, female, multiple times, borrow both roles. Everybody plays different roles here. It's a game, fantasy game.
And how does it work, this reincarnation? This coming back again as different roles in different bodies?
You will not go through the next life until your heart is lighter than a feather. It is harder to go through the eye of a needle. You have to forgive and forget and to love. You will not pass this dimension until you graduate. It is so easy to do. You will make it very difficult. You have to help people unconditionally. Don't do it for anybody else. Don't do it for you to go to the next dimension.
And so in that session with Tom, we actually didn't go to the last day of that life as Matthew, because his consciousness expanded for us to then have that direct dialogue with the guardian angel, which in an incarnated form had been his grandfather from a previous life. And I think he also said that he was his brother as well.
What's your relationship with Tom?
I was his grandfather 2 lives before this present one. Then I was his brother. We played out many roles together. I am on the other side. You call them guardian angels, guides. We're here to guide.
What's the best name I can call you?
Stick with guardian angels. That sounds official. I like that.
So it also seems that we repeat these stories with what I will call our soul companions, that there are souls who are familiar to us because we've done this before with them, but we might have had a different role. So, oftentimes there's the phenomena where the daughter takes the mothering role, and then on deeper exploration, we find out that actually their roles were reversed, that in that past life exploration, that the daughter was in fact the mother. And so she can't help herself but take on some of those qualities and attitudes. But what also can be taken on are these much deeper subconscious beliefs. And this is how this process can be quite miraculous and quite healing. But at the same time, those subconscious protections, I'll call them protections, have their purpose. They play their part. One particular story I'm thinking about is a young man who came in, and he was very quiet, quite reserved, quite introverted. And when I was talking to him, he shared that he wasn't always this way, that actually he was quite extroverted and even the class clown. But then he went on a trip to visit his hometown, which is actually in a different country where his father was. And something happened there, something personal happened there between that dynamic. And when he came back, he was changed. And then, and he was so changed that his classmates had treated him differently and started to kind of pick on him. And so he was coming to find out what happened and could we release this block. So what we found when he went into the story was that the scene that he started to describe was a tribal, indigenous type culture. And he found himself, so he was a man, and he found himself disagreeing with the tribal leader. And so he was figuring out ways that he could so he could leave the tribe and be independent. And this is quite unique because, you know, in tribal culture, it's much safer if you stay together. You know, it's safer from other potentially warring tribes. It's safer from nature. So it's important for tribal members to stick together. But he wanted to take his family, take his children, and he wanted to be out on his own. And so he went to an important day and he was successful in that. He'd left the tribe and they were having a wonderful time. He was teaching. So one of the things was that women weren't taught in that particular tribe, women weren't taught how to hunt, and he disagreed with that. He felt that women and girls should learn how to hunt. And so he was teaching his children how to hunt, and he was very happy and it was all going well. And then we went to another important day, and in this day, it was disastrous. Another tribe had come in and had taken his wife and his children and then killed him. So out of that experience was the belief now that when I stand up for myself, or when I do what is true to my value system, really bad things happen. I lose what I love and I get killed. This type of subconscious conclusion can be carried forth from one storyline to another storyline. So even if we were to ignore the even if we were to ignore that it's a past lives, like even if we were to take that off the shelf, that somehow consciousness can expand and can access these incredibly sophisticated and detailed that engages all of the senses and can connect with that and then bring that in, and then somehow those themes apply to this lifetime now, and that somehow even deeper down in the psyche that there are these conclusions that this personality is holding as a protection, that okay, I can't, in this case, I can't stand up for and I can't act upon my true value system, because when I do what I want, bad things happen, terrible, tragic things happen, and I die. So that's, so, you know, so this is how this work can be so incredibly powerful. And, you know, as I was preparing for this service, I happened upon the Wikipedia page for reincarnation, and it was going into, as past life therapy, rather. I'm sorry, not reincarnation, past life therapy. And the final conclusion was that this is a method that goes against the Hippocratic Oath. And, I challenge their mainstream therapists out there to be able to access this level of subconscious belief to help free the consciousness from these old protections, which is what they are, they're protections. But these protections can keep us safe and the same, but it keeps us small. We have this amazing opportunity to be able to find a way to, again, access this part of our consciousness that knows our story, knows all of the stories that pertain to this story, that are relevant to this story, all the way to our direct relationship with our divine creator. So for me, it fits quite nicely into Christian philosophy, in that we are still having these experiences to purify the soul and to strengthen. For some reason, I see the soul. It flips between a pearl and a diamond. That the pearl gets rubbed by the sand particles, and it's abrasive and it's uncomfortable. But through that, the pearl becomes so hard, and it becomes round and beautiful and luminescent and strong. And same with the diamond. The diamond is born out of this great pressure, and it just comes out clear and clean and beautiful. And so it doesn't matter, right? No matter what, the final message here is that we are here to figure out how to live purely the golden rule, how to be of service, how to bring more love into this moment as this. So it's not about getting stuck in the past. It's not about leading our current lives through these stories. However, they're helpful. They're helpful in painting the whole picture. So we have all the pieces of the puzzle so that we can best navigate our lives here now, so that we have that congruency. And that's part of our journey here too. That's a part of the journey of self-mastery, is this congruency. So when we have the pieces, we can connect with them, we can integrate them, we can leave behind that which no longer serves us, so that we are fully intact. So we have all of the energies available to us. We have that pure connection with the divine, with our divine creator, to have that intimate conversation, to know him, to be of service to him, so that he can use our eyes, so that he can use our hands, he can use our hearts, he can use this body, he can use these legs to fulfill his will. All right, so I think I will end it here. Thank you for joining me. Yes, I think I will continue with a part 2 and go into some of my memories, and also how those memories have helped me, and also contribute to why I am here doing the work that I'm doing. And also to share some of the stories as I've uncovered them through the quantum healing hypnosis work, because they are quite miraculous. And then we'll see where that takes us. We'll see. It seems like these services have their own way of going. I don't truly know where they're going to go. I do a little bit of preparation, as you can tell, but then, inevitably they do their own thing. They have their own way with me. All right, so okay, I would like to share. So keep in your calendar June the 2nd for our 1-day meditation spiritual retreat. It's very important to take time out of your busy schedule to just be still, and to kind of be contained in a room, to be accountable to others, and to receive the facilitation, to receive the guidance. Okay, so that's on June the 2nd. Next Wednesday, for a series of 4, if you are local to New Jersey, I'm starting a spiritual intuition 4-week intuition class. It's called the Know Thyself class. It's wonderful. It includes meditation, journaling, helping. It's just another way to help clear out what you don't need so that you have more of your own energies available to you to be yourself here. And then for those of you who are not local, I have on the 3rd Tuesday of the month, my mindfulness-based meditation class, which I encourage you to join. It's just an hour. And then on the 4th Monday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern time, because I'm in New Jersey, I have the meditation, natural healing, self-help, where I teach you a protocol for conditions that manifest in the body. And so that's it for now. So thank you, everybody, and I will see you next time.
No matter where you are, I'm with you. No matter where you are, I hear you. No matter where you are, I miss you. Your flesh will be